I got all excited there. It might seem an unlikely place for wildlife watching, but I'm spending a long weekend here in Berlin, getting away from the hustle and bustle to see what wildlife I can discover. Towards the end of the video, I'll also share with you how I pack and travel with my camera gear. This is amazing. I'm in one of Berlin's many cemeteries, and they can be so good for wildlife. They've actually put a bird table here. There was a lot of birds, and then I spotted the bird table. There's been great tits, robins, and quite a few greenfinches as well, although unfortunately they seem to have that disease on their feet, which I think is a fungal infection. And I've just seen, no, I said robin, just seen a robin, and then there's been blue tits as well. But they're so tame, and I'm just standing here, just nice and quiet, and the birds are coming so close. It's absolutely fantastic. There is a tree right next to this this bird table, so the birds are often coming in there, which they often do. If there's a tree or a bush nearby, they'll often come in there first. But it's absolutely perfect because it's just so much more natural. And this is the thing, you can just see so much, like in these cemeteries. I just find them really peaceful. I really enjoy if you just take your time and slow down, maybe sit on one of the benches. I actually find them really peaceful and can be fantastic for wildlife. And there's loads of wood pigeons in this particular cemetery as well, some getting a little bit amorous. And I'd say I'm using my hearing, my sense of hearing more than anything, because I'm just staying here still and I'm just listening for any sound. And even little tapping, I could hear a little tapping sound, and I looked up and that was a great spotted woodpecker. Another little tapping I think was a great tit. And I've also heard a jay, but I didn't see it. I love how the branches on the tall trees catch those last rays of sunshine. This is the Tiergarten, a very large park close to Berlin city centre, and it's a wonderful place to spend time. There's a mixture of trees, including some gorgeous stands of beech, beautiful leaf litter, and a lot of it does feel wilder to me. There's patches of denser cover and pools and ponds, and there's also some large clearings as well. At this time of year, it is just full of bird song, various tits, chaffinches, nuthatch, just seen a couple of tree creepers, and also the sound of the raven croaking overhead. I did actually hear a raven earlier on close to my hotel, which is deep in the heart of the city. Berlin's parks really are a fantastic place to see red squirrels, and there seems to be a thriving population here. I've I've noticed as well that some of the squirrels look very orange, much more orange than the squirrels I've seen back in the UK, and at this time of year you can still see those beautiful ear tufts. If you're lucky, you might actually see 3 types of woodpecker in here. I've seen the greater spotted and I've heard the middle spotted, but I haven't seen the lesser spotted. The middle spotted woodpecker has a very interesting call. It's quite a loud kind of mewing sound. It does sound a little bit similar to a bird of prey. So if you hear something like that but you can't see anything big, it could be a middle spotted woodpecker. And around the water you've always got a good chance of seeing grey heron. The Tiergarten is a very busy park full of walkers, joggers, bikers and families. It's great to see this space so well used in so many different ways, but be aware, unless you're out super early in the morning, you'll never have it to yourself. There's also some amazing grasslands around the city, a wonderful place to listen to early morning birdsong like skylarks and corn buntings. There's an age-old saying in Berlin, which is, wherever you go, you're never far away from a hooded crow. I just made that up, but it is true. Without doubt, the best way to get around Berlin is to use the train system. Both the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn get you efficiently where you need to be and are very reliable. That said, there is still a lot of walking if you want to reach the best locations. I'm visiting a cemetery to the south of Berlin and I'm hoping I might see a goshawk. Goshawks are thriving here and it's estimated there's over 100 pairs in and around Berlin. Perhaps surprisingly, they even breed in some of Berlin's parks and cemeteries and have become rather accustomed to people. In fact, Berlin is one of the best locations I've ever seen for approachable birds of prey, and the many corvids can also be remarkably tolerant. I'm in one of Berlin's smaller cemeteries today and I just absolutely love them. I think I've kind of learned to fall in love with these places. And I think one of the reasons they are so good is they're just naturally quiet places. I think if you visit, you just feel that inclination that you have to be quiet as well, because it just feels disrespectful if you're not. And I think that's one of the reasons that there's more wildlife, and perhaps the wildlife is more approachable as well. I do find the cemeteries in Berlin particularly beautiful. They always look really well managed and you can see the care that's put in there for the upkeep of the cemetery, and also the people who are regularly here tending to the loved ones' graves. And it's just fantastic to see so much wildlife flourishing. In some way it just seems fitting for wildlife to be flourishing in this place. I think they make a fantastic natural environment. You've often got quite tall, mature trees, perfect for a range of birds for nesting and for feeding. And then the smaller trees, bushes and shrubs, which are just ideal cover for your small birds. So I feel like it's almost micro habitats within a fairly small habitat within an urban habitat. Even the gravestones provide the perfect cover for an aerial hunter like the mighty goshawk. I got all excited there. I thought it might be a goshawk, but it was a wood pigeon. Anything fast and grey, I tend to get rather excited. I didn't see any goshawks here, but I did have a brief glimpse of one earlier in one of the parks as it glided supremely through the trees. I think if you visit a cemetery, a graveyard like this, the best thing you can do is just find yourself a bench, sit down quietly and just wait. Just take in everything you can see, everything you can hear, and I bet you within an hour or so you'll have seen so much more than you ever expected. Now you might be wondering what on earth is that blue bag, and this is something I wouldn't usually have with me for photography. I'll explain why I'm using this. A little bit of change of scenery now, and I do apologise if it's a little bit echoey in this room because it's just easier to do this bit in the hotel room. So here is the bright blue bag, which I'll come to in a minute. But first of all, the gear I've got for this trip, I've got a 300mm f4 lens, and I've also got my bigger 500mm f4 lens. I've got an extender as well. Now I really wanted to bring my big 500mm, but I also wanted the bag to carry it in because I didn't want to just carry that lens around the streets of Berlin. What that meant was I still needed another bag to put everything else in, clothes and things, but the smaller camera bag just wasn't enough room basically. So I've opted for this bag, which my partner actually brought me, which is just one of the best things she's probably ever bought. I think it is actually called a flight bag. It's just like one big space inside. There's no different compartments and things, so it just gives you more space, and it's full of pockets as well. So I have been using this to carry my camera with a 300mm lens and the vlogging gear and anything extra in there that I need, food and water. I've strapped the tripod to the side of it as well, so this has been my everyday bag and also doubles up as a clothes bag on the aeroplane. And I've actually bought one of those mats that you can sit on, which I've folded up and put in that bag to use as a divider so I can separate some of my gear and keep it safe. Now I did get asked about carrying camera gear onto the plane and restrictions. Ideally you want to have all your camera gear with you in the cabin as much as possible, and that's usually what I do. The only thing I might put in my suitcase if it's checked in baggage in the hold is my tripod, but apart from that I'll try and keep everything with me. That way you're not going to lose it. It's safer as well because you're the only one handling it. And if you're travelling with no baggage in the hold, then I would suggest having one bag most for your clothes and one for your camera gear, which is pretty much what I did this time. So any luggage you have with you that you take onto the plane will be called carry-on luggage, maybe cabin luggage, basically the same thing. And it's really important that you check the restrictions, the limits for both the size and the weight. So I was travelling with EasyJet here to Berlin, and if you take a large bag, cabin bag, which you can put above you, which is really good, it's 56 by 45 by 25 centimetres, and you can also have a small bag which you have to put under the seat, which is 45 by 36 by 20 centimetres. These are going to be pretty similar for a lot of airlines I think, but they're definitely not all the same, so you absolutely must make sure you check on those sizes. You don't want to have any problems, and also check the weight. It might not even specify that, or it might be more in the small print. Other times it's very clear, it could be 10 kilos, 15, sometimes it's been 8, and on internal flights you might find that the restrictions it's a little bit more limited. Obviously if you're carrying with a suitcase in the hold, then it's not really an issue because you've just got a lot more size and weight. It's often 20, 23 kilos and above. And in addition to your carry-on luggage, the airline usually lets you have a small bag as well, which is usually like a laptop bag or a handbag, for example, or like a little bum bag, which I sometimes wear. But sometimes it can be a struggle getting everything onto the plane that you really want. If you're really struggling for space, then one thing you can can do is put some things in your pockets. I actually did this on this trip because I was really struggling, because I was trying to travel light and get everything in that I wanted. You could put things like batteries, maybe a small lens, maybe it's like a standard lens or a zoom lens, maybe a couple of adapter or two. So if you're really struggling, make use of your pockets, and they don't weigh you. Nobody ever weighs you or measures you. Somebody did ask me about safety of your equipment when it's going through the scanners. Now, I don't think this is an issue with digital cameras, and it's not something I've ever come across, putting your camera gear through the scanners. If you're using film, as I used to, then it can potentially damage film going through the scanner. What you can actually do is buy a special bag. It's a lead-lined bag which you put your film in before it goes through one of those scanners. If you just look for lead-lined film photo bag, you should find it. And Paul, hello Paul, how are you doing? Paul asked me, how do I decide what clothes to wear? You know, if you're going on a trip, how do you decide on your clothing? So I pay a lot of attention to the weather forecast, which is not always completely accurate, as we know. But I do have a really good look at the weather, and I can make my decisions around that. So not just temperature, but also wind as well, because wind tends to be the thing that makes you colder than anything else. And also I'll think what kind of photography I'm going to be doing. Am I going to be stood around, sat on a bench? Am I likely to be getting mucky? Am I going to be kneeling down, lying down? That will then help me decide what clothes I need. For this trip, I didn't think I was going to be getting very mucky, so otherwise I would have brought waterproof trousers. And if I thought I was doing a lot of kneeling, which I haven't done, then I probably bought the knee pads as well. For this trip, just absolutely incredible, beautiful weather, reaching 16, 17 degrees in the afternoon, so it wasn't going to be too much of an issue. I didn't bring a coat for this trip. I just decided to go with my soft shell jacket as my outer layer, because I just feel less restricted in that, and it does have some warmth as well. This isn't the first time I've visited Berlin, and each time I learn something new about the urban wildlife. If you'd like to see me photographing urban wildlife close to home back in the UK with lots of photo tips and techniques, then just click the video link that's on the screen. I hope you found this video peaceful and relaxing, and I'll see you sometime soon.